Hi and welcome to the Happy Artichoke. My name's Rachel and today I'm going to talk with you about my experience in the hospital getting my thyroid removed. Let's talk first about pre-surgery. 4 days beforehand, my doctor asked me to take calcium pills just to boost my calcium before surgery because when they take the thyroid out, there's 4 glands that sit on top of it called parathyroid glands, and those have a lot to do with how your calcium functions in your body. They get really irritated during surgery and that can alter your calcium. So I took 4 days worth of calcium, and I also took a drug called potassium iodide for 10 days before surgery. The night before surgery, I had to stop eating or drinking anything at midnight. I was also supposed to bathe myself in a HibaCleanse solution, which is an antimicrobial solution. I completely forgot to do that. The pre-surgical nurse, the day of surgery, when I told her that I had forgotten to do that, she just gave me some HibaCleanse wipes that I used along my torso and along my arms, and she said that I didn't need to worry about that. On the morning of surgery, my husband and I went to the OR waiting area at 6 a.m. I wore loose-fitted clothing that I knew I would wear out of the hospital, and I only brought with me a couple things. I brought my phone and my phone charger. I also packed my ID and an insurance card, and I also brought a couple things to do if I was bored. I packed a notebook and a pen so that I could keep track of any questions I had or answers to those questions. I was called back around 6:30 or so, and a nurse came in and asked me a couple questions, things like, did I have any screws or rods in my body? Did I bring any valuables with me? We rechecked my emergency contact, my allergies, previous medical history. I took off all the clothing I had, put on a gown, and they placed an IV. At that point, they asked my husband if he wanted to come back and sit with me. All of that probably took about 30 minutes or so. The plan was for me to go to the OR pretty quickly after that, but apparently there had been a trauma the night before and they still needed to clean the room. So I was still waiting to go to the OR probably for another hour and a half. So I didn't actually go into the OR until about 8:30 in the morning. But for that next hour that I was in that pre-op area with my husband, many people came in and out introducing themselves. Anesthesia came in, my surgeon came in, the physician's assistant came in. It was a really good time just to ask questions and get any answers that we needed before surgery. What I do remember about waking up right after surgery was that the nurse asked me a lot of questions. I definitely felt really loopy and like I just couldn't gather my thoughts. She did grab me roxicodone, which is a liquid form of oxycodone. I just asked for a half dose of that as well as some Tylenol, and that was the only time I had narcotic pain medication. Something else I should have mentioned earlier is that when anesthesia came in to meet me in pre-op, they asked if I have any issues with nausea in car rides or boat rides, stuff like that, which I do. So they gave me something called a scopolamine patch. It looks like a little round band-aid. You wear it for 72 hours behind your ear and that helps with nausea. And I also found out later they gave me a plethora of anti-nausea drugs during surgery, like Phenergan, Pepcid, Reglan, Zofran, anti-nausea drugs. So I never had any nausea after surgery. One of the first things that I told my husband when he asked me how I was doing when he came to visit me in the post-op area was that I felt like a truck just drove right over my neck. The pain was pretty intense and actually mostly just felt like pressure. My voice was hoarse. Much of that is from the ventilator. They intubate you and put a breathing tube down your throat during surgery to support you. So that's where that throat soreness came from. Later, I started saying that it just felt like a grocery cart full of groceries ran over my throat. So it quickly moved away from that really intense pain. I had a pain score of 6 out of 10 once, and other than that, my pain was between a 3 and a 5 the rest of the time I was in the hospital. The nurses in post-op were really awesome. They were very attentive. My husband was actually meeting someone at the hospital to get a cake I bought for the nursing staff, at the time that he was allowed to come back and see me, so he did not get the phone call out to the OR waiting area. So she actually called him on his cell phone to let him know that I was ready and able to see him in the post-op waiting area. I was in the post-op area for a lot longer than is normal. I was there for 4 or 5 hours, whereas patients are typically there about 2 to 3 hours. So I did get up to use the bathroom twice while I was there. The first time I got into a wheelchair and they wheeled me to the bathroom. The second time was probably an hour after that, and I was able to walk. So in post-op, I was able to talk, walk, use the bathroom. They gave me a lot of ice chips, and I actually just sucked down cold water like I was parched. I hit a lot of milestones already just in that post-op area 4 hours after surgery. At 4 p.m. I was transferred up to a nursing unit. My husband was still with me. A nurse came to check on me at least every 4 hours. They would look at my incision, actually touch around the incision, which was tender, but they were just making sure that it felt the way it should. They gave me my pain medication, so I had ibuprofen and Tylenol every 8 hours, so it was every 4 hours I got one of them. In the beginning, I was given liquid pain medication. That helped so much getting pain meds down my throat because it was just so sore. I kept myself to kind of like a full liquids, which is oatmeal, eggs, any liquids. I started with a pudding, and then I eventually had an oatmeal and 2 eggs for dinner. So those all went down fine. I definitely noticed I had to chew a lot more and be a lot more thoughtful. Physicians tend to round pretty early in the morning, around 6 a.m. or so. Now, because they round so early, they also want their patients' blood results by the time they round so that they can put in new orders, electrolytes, things like that. So they get these labs at around 2 in the morning. So I did get a lab draw around 2 in the morning. My electrolytes came back a little low, my calcium and my magnesium, which is very common after this type of surgery. So the doctors ordered for me to have my magnesium and my calcium replaced. So the nurse brought those in around 6 or 7 o'clock. It took about 3 hours for those electrolytes to get in my system, and then they rechecked those again around 1 p.m. Those can take anywhere from half an hour to 2 hours to result. I was told by about 2 p.m. or so, my electrolytes came up. So my magnesium was normal and my calcium was normal, which was great news because that meant that I could go home. About 2 hours later, I was discharged from the hospital. My husband drove us home. I started my recovery at home. There's a couple things that I think are really important to know as a patient for when you go into the hospital. And one of them, especially if this is for something that's causing you pain, I think it's really important to know what pain medications you have available to you and talk with your nursing team about when you'd like them. Advocate for yourself and make sure you communicate with the nursing staff and the doctor's staff if you need to by asking, what pain medication do I have? What plan can we create together that you think will be best for me to manage my pain? The other thing is, if you're getting pain medication, you don't feel that it's controlling your pain adequately, make sure you tell someone, because if you are getting something every 4 hours, you get to that 3rd hour and you're like, I can't stand it. They can get an order for something to hold you kind of in between until you can get that pain better managed. The other thing I highly recommend is knowing what you need, which is kind of hard in the hospital. When people came in to check on me, so whether it was the nurse or the nurse's aide, I almost always needed something. Whenever someone came in, I almost always asked for my ice pack to be replaced with ice, for new ice water, and then if I needed like hot tea, ice chips, I always asked for something. So don't be afraid to ask for something when people come in. They genuinely are there because they want to know if you need anything, and that is the best opportunity to ask for help. If you felt bad, you didn't want to ask them for something, you thought maybe, oh, I'll just call back later in half an hour and ask them for it, they're probably going to be with another patient. When they come into the room, think about all the things you need. Do you need something for pain? Do you need to go to the restroom? Do you have everything you need close to you? Is your position okay, or do you need them to help reposition you? Also think about privacy. So do you want them to close your door? These are all things that hopefully they're asking you about, but you need to make sure that you can advocate for yourself by thinking of those things when they come in. The last thing that I think is really essential is keeping a notebook. And that's a notebook that hopefully you've already been using during pre-surgical appointments. Use it to jot down any questions you have. I know this was a really important thing for my husband and I because there's a lot of information you're taking in. That's a very common thing for patients to do. You're not going to surprise anyone or offend anyone. I just highly recommend doing that. I hope that was helpful for you. I would love to answer any other questions you have. Please just leave them below. You can also message me by following my social media links or hitting the Contact Me button in the bottom of the browser on my website, happyartichoke.com. There's a lot of information out there. It can be really overwhelming. So the more prepared you are mentally and physically, the better off you'll be. That first week of recovery is pretty tough. After that, so far I've kind of felt like it's smooth sailing. I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for listening.